So generally speaking, I tend to do my first vlog update of the week when I have something conclusive to say, when I finished a book, when I'm starting a new one, when I've hauled something. However, I thought I'd kick off this week's vlog with just a little update of what I'm currently reading. A lot of new people have joined my channel recently, and I want to touch upon briefly what I'm currently in the middle of so that new people don't feel like they're just jumping in like halfway through a thing. But I also don't want to make it redundant for the people who watch my vlogs a lot and hearing me repeat the same synopses over and over again. So I'm currently reading just the one book, which is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone in the illustrated editions. If you did watch last week's vlog, you'll see that I got up to page 159 before I gave up for the week, essentially. But I'm planning on finishing this tonight. I have about 90 pages left. When I finish doing this update, I'm gonna go edit last week's vlog, get that all ready to upload and things like that, and see if I can power through the last 90 pages of this. I'm really enjoying it so far. I think it's gonna be a 4-star read for me because the later books in the Harry Potter series are my favorites. I like Goblet of Fire because of the tournament aspect, and then the later books because they're much darker. But the first 3 I only really anticipate giving 4 stars too. I thought it could possibly have been lower, but going into this one I would say it's like a solid 4-star book. So that's all I'm currently reading, but I do have a book here that I'm about to start very soon, and I was going to start this today in my lunch break at work. Today was my first day back at work after the Christmas break, and I didn't get around to starting this on my lunch break because I was setting up a Goodreads group, which is something I will also talk about in just a second. But the book is A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. This is not in my Bookopoly TBR, but I am hosting a read-along, so I do need to read it. However, the read-along does stretch like it's 2 months per book, so I have until the end of February to read this. But I do want to get started in case I can't power through it like I would a normal book. I say a normal book, like a shorter, less dense book, because it does have 800 pages, which is a lot. I'm quite torn with this because I want to split it up to make it manageable and break it down into more digestible chunks, but I don't want to get taken away from the story and not know what's going on or not enjoy it as much because I'm not fully immersed. But at the same time, I don't want to save it, try and read it all in one chunk and then get bogged down for 2 weeks because I just can't read it consistently because it's so dense. So I think at the minute this is going to be my workbook. I am doing a book diary for it, so we'll see how that sort of translates. I think I'll try and make notes at work and then do like daily updates on the chunks that I have read. And I want to at least read 18 chapters this week, which will keep me on track for the read along in the weekly breakdown. I'll put a link to the announcement video up here if you do want to join the read along. We are on the first book, but in the description box of that video there is a link to the Twitter for the read along. It's at Catch Up Book Club. There is like, I put a page breakdown or like a chapter breakdown of how much you have to read per day, week or month if you want to stay on track to be able to join the live shows and discuss it with us. So I want to be at least on track with that, but I don't want it to take away from my other reads, so at the moment I'm just going to have it as my lunch book. The other thing I want to say about this is that I did run a poll on the read along Twitter and people said that they wanted a Goodreads group. I started today on my lunch, which is why I wasn't reading, setting that up because I find it a lot easier to do like admin things like that while I'm at work in front of a desktop computer instead of trying to do it on a phone or a laptop. So I did start to set that up. Hopefully by the time this vlog goes up it will be like a little bit more wrapped up, but regardless I will put a link to it in the description box, so if you are taking a part in the A Song of Ice and Fire read along you can go check that out. I have split it into the weekly chapter breakdown, so like each discussion topic is like a 9-chapter chunk, so if any of you are reading along and you want to discuss certain things that happen in certain chapters, then you can find like the relevant link without spoiling it for other people. So all of that will be linked down below. The last thing I want to mention is kind of a clarification or just like some new information I've discovered about the Lotus War Trilogy by Kristoff. Now I have been singing this series praises because I absolutely love it. I find it like absolutely amazing and so immersive. I love the Asian inspired setting and the brutality and the intrigue, the action. I adore this series, okay? But a subscriber made it known to me today in my comments that even though they don't know a whole lot about Japanese culture, they just have like a casual interest and know a little bit of the language, they tried to read this and it is not good representation. So they got to like chapter 3 and couldn't continue. Obviously I didn't want to take that at face value and like start to say that this is an accurate representation without doing any research. So I did like have a quick Google and I did find one that linked me to other reviews that say that it isn't great representation. I still absolutely love it, and I'm not going to change my opinion now based on that one I didn't know to start off with, because as you guys know, I do say I love Asian inspired fantasy, but as for the actual real world culture, I don't actually know a lot, and this is the first series of this kind that I've read that has so much Japanese terminology and information in it. And I did wonder about the representation, but I haven't had time to dig, and I kind of you just assume that it's good representation. But apparently the use of language is inconsistent and inaccurate, like the use of the honorific, is it chan, and there's another one, is it simi? I can't pronounce things in Japanese to start off with. Also, a lot of people didn't like how Japan was presented in this. It's very brutal, it's a very brutal world, and Japan isn't painted in a good light. Like, it adds to the atmosphere, and I don't think differently of Japan. Like, I don't see Japan as this like barbaric place because of this series, but this is a very barbaric setting. Kristoff has said that this is not Japan. Like, the country is called Shima, and Shima is different from Japan, but it is very obviously Japan. So take what you will from that, but I have been recommending this a lot. It was like number 4 in my best, well, the first book was number 4 in my best books of the year, but just know that the representation may not be great. Obviously, I can't tell you for sure. I can only really tell you what I've read, because I know nothing of real world Japanese culture or history or things like that. It is something I'm interested in, but like, the UK schooling system teaches you so little about it that I wouldn't even know where to start looking into anything about Japanese culture and history. So I just wanted you to be aware of that, as I have been hyping it up so much and a lot of you will be going into it. I don't want you to read anything that offends you if you are familiar with Japanese culture and you think that the representation is trash. So that's about everything for this update. I am going to go edit my last week's vlog. I'm going to try and finish Harry Potter, and then I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm like really tired from work. I was falling asleep for most of the day, but what else is new? Sad that I'm back, but I do have a couple of days off at the end of the month, although I will be traveling when I'm off, so it's not like a break as such. But I'm gonna go get on with some editing, and I'll check in with you later. Good evening. So I have quite a bit to fill you in on. So first up, I just finished Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. I think I'm gonna give it a 4, like I said I was gonna give it. I was thinking maybe a 3.5 because I didn't feel any type of way about it, because I already know the story, but I nearly cried at the end when Gryffindor won the House Cup, even though I'm not a Gryffindor. I don't really like Gryffindor. Gryffindor's my least favourite house. But, you know, just that sense of unity always gets me in the feels. As you can tell, I'm a Slytherin, so I should be bitter. Maybe that's why I was crying, because I was mad. But I did really enjoy my reread of this. Didn't, like, blow me away, but it was good. I enjoyed it. I think I'm going to probably enjoy books 4 through 7 a lot more than books 1 through 3. I don't think I mentioned that my best friend Ryan is doing a read-along for this. I have mentioned it like in other videos, but in this vlog I didn't. I read this for Ryan's read along. We're reading the first 2 books in January, so I do intend to carry on and read Chamber of Secrets sometime this month, but I want to read some more Bookopoly books first, because they're like my predominant priority right now. I'm kind of sad as well that the books that I expect to like the least are in the illustrated editions, and then the rest haven't been released yet, but that's like how it goes in chronological order, obviously. I also started Game of Thrones today, and I kind of want to give a synopsis for this because I don't know how many people like necessarily know what Game of Thrones is about. Obviously a lot of you will have at least watched the show if you haven't read the books, but I know a few people taking part in the read along have not watched the show, and I know before I started watching it I didn't really know what it was about, and I tried to watch the show 3 times and never made it past 10 minutes before I met my boyfriend, and he said, do you want to watch Game of Thrones? And I said I tried it and I didn't like it, but we watched it together and I stuck with it and I loved it. So Game of Thrones, let's try and give a synopsis for this, because it doesn't say on the actual book synopsis, and also I know why it's called Game of Thrones, but I don't know if that's a spoiler. So it follows many different families across Westeros. I think the main ones in the first book are the Starks, who are the Keepers of the North, the Lannisters, who are the family of the Queen. There's the Baratheons, which are the family of the king and his children. And there's also Daenerys Targaryen, who is with her brother in another country because they have been banished. Their family used to rule Westeros, but they were dethroned. There's also something called the Wall across this land, and the wall separates like the far north from the rest of the country. And there are people called wildlings who live over the wall, and they're considered to be wild and barbaric. And there may also be other things living across the wall. That's all I feel like I can say without giving any spoilers. It's really hard with me knowing the show. And there's something crucial that happens in book 1 which kicks off everything that happens, and I could give you that as a synopsis, but I can't remember how far in it happens, so I don't know if it is a spoiler. But that's like a really bad sort of overview of part of Game of Thrones, I guess. I don't know why I even attempted it, because it was bad. It was a bad synopsis. But anyway, I read the prologue and I was kind of bored, I'm not gonna lie. But the prologue is the first 10 minutes of the first episode, which is what I could never get through to actually get into the show. So I don't feel like it was the chapter that offended me. It was my preconceptions of the chapter based on not being able to get through it when I've tried to watch the show several times. And then I read the first chapter, and that is when the Starks find the direwolves, and I was just in love and I was hooked from there because the direwolves. But then also, like, that's kind of sad because, you know, the direwolves. That's where I'm up to with this. I'm still reading it on my lunch, as I said. It's still a workbook, and yeah, I'm enjoying it. I put a little tab in. That's where I should have been up to by Sunday. That's the first 9 chapters, so I'm hoping to get to there and then move my tab along and get further this week, and that will be like the first 18 chapters, and then I should be on track for my own read along. So in last week's vlog, I mentioned that I was going to try and read my Bookopoly books in order. So the first role for Harry Potter was to read a book in a fantasy world, and the second one was to read a book in a culturally diverse setting. And for that, I decided I was going to read The Poppy War by R.F. Kong. Now, what I know about this is that it is a grimdark fantasy that is based around the historical event of the Rape of Nanking, which is when I think it was Japanese soldiers raped and massacred an entire city in China. The city is Nanking. Is it Nanking or Nanjing? Do you pronounce it Nanking because that's Chinese pronunciation? I've heard it called both, and I don't know why it's called both, but this book follows that historical event in a fantasy setting. It's very dark, trigger warnings for pretty much everything, so if you are sensitive to any topics, especially like rape, murder, graphic violence, I would recommend checking a full list of trigger warnings before entering into this one. So I was looking up the Lotus War when I was searching for the accurate representation thing, and I found out that the Lotus War trilogy is a grimdark fantasy, and I'd never heard that term before until I said that I didn't really know what this book was about, and somebody in the comments told me it was grimdark fantasy. It's also East Asian inspired. It's set in China, maybe Japan or worlds inspired by those countries. So I'm really excited to read this now because, as you guys know, for the past few weeks I've just been harping on about Asian fantasy, and I think it's going to be quite similar to the Lotus War, but hopefully not too similar because I haven't finished the Lotus War trilogy and I really don't want to get them confused when I have one book of the Lotus War trilogy left. So I will be moving on to this, hoping to start this tonight. It is a very chunky one. I have 3 books over 500 pages on my TBR this month. I've read 1, I have 2 to go. So I'll fill you in on this when I read a little bit, see if I can give you a better synopsis and tell you my thoughts. But for tonight, it's about 7:30 p.m. and I'm going to go and get a shower. I might do my nails because I haven't done them in weeks and I have like really chipped nail polish and stuff, and while I'm doing that I might watch some Netflix. I finished Harry Potter, that means I can return to Spyro if I wish. I've also started, actually, Ali from Hardback Hoarder shared a database, like it's lots of spreadsheets in one document tracking your reading goals and stats for 2019, and I have started using that. There were a couple of bits that like weren't working correctly and I have no idea how to use Excel, but I did tweak it and managed to like fix those little bits. So I'm gonna enter some stuff into there, I think, and also continue working on the Goodreads group for the Game of Thrones read along, and then yeah, watch TV and stuff. So I'm gonna go do that because I have quite a bit to do and very little time because I want a little bit of an early night, and I'll catch up with you guys later. Hey guys, so it's been a little while since we've done a vlog update in this location, and it's also been a few days since I have updated you. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is that I haven't read anything new. I'm still reading The Poppy War and I'm still reading Game of Thrones. And the second reason is that every book I've picked up this week I'm doing a book diary for. So whenever I need to update with like instant thoughts, I'm filming for the book diaries, not for the vlog, and obviously I don't want everything to be too repetitive. As you guys saw, I also started playing Fallout 76 this week, so if you guys do play Fallout 76 on Xbox, then please let me know. I put a tweet out and literally got no response, so I'm guessing not many people do play it, but if you do, then let me know, because it's an online Fallout. And I'm still getting to grips with it. Like, I don't really know what the online mechanisms are, but you can have teams and play with friends, and none of my normal Xbox friends have Fallout 76, so let me know if you do. So my progress in Game of Thrones, I'm only on around page 40. I haven't made as much progress as I would like at all, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue having it as my workbook and prioritize the other books on my TBR, because when I finish The Poppy War, I have one more book over 500 pages from my TBR to read, and then I have a manga and a graphic novel and the second Harry Potter book, and I don't think they're going to take me that long to read. And so what I'll do at the end of the month, while I'm waiting for my new TBR to start for February, is I'll power through some Game of Thrones. But I did say I would come back and let you know about The Poppy War, and I'll give you like an updated plot now that I've read quite a bit of it. I'm up to page 369, so I have read like a huge chunk since I started this on Tuesday. I'm really happy with the progress I've been making in this. I'm reading it very, very quickly. But this follows a girl called Rin, who is a war orphan, and her aunt and uncle want to marry her off to this import guy who will get them better deals on the goods that they can import and sell in their store. Rin doesn't want this, so she decides that she wants to take this test, and the test is for people to qualify to go to the training academies across the country. The problem is that you have to pay for all of these academies except for one, which is Guard, the military academy. But to get into there, you have to have extremely high test scores, and nobody from her province ever gets into that academy. However, of course, as it would make a pretty boring story, she didn't. She does get to go to Guard, and that's where the story really starts to take off, as she is training at this school. A lot of people really don't like her because she's from the south and she's a peasant, and this school essentially just trains the children of warlords, but anyone can get in to make it seem a lot more fair than the system actually is. So I really like the story of this. I find it really compelling, as you can tell, because I'm reading it really quickly. However, I do have just a couple of, they're not necessarily complaints, they're more like personal preferences. When I went into this, I expected it to be a lot more dense than it is. I'd read the first third of the book and there had been like no descriptions of the landscape of the country aside from the academy. When she gets there, she says that it's like built into a mountain and there's pagodas and things like that, but there's no, like, the first area that she's in, the province that she comes from, there's no descriptions of places or anything like that. Now this is set in a fantasy world, so it doesn't fit into any sort of human time period, but the rape of King does happen in this book. I'm not up to it yet. I was reading an interview with the author and I think it's chapter 21. So that does happen, which places the timeline of this book, if it is following the events of the Second Sino-Japanese War, which I believe it is, it places the timeline of the book in the 30s or 40s. But it's set in a fantasy world and it doesn't seem to be rooted in any human timeline. There's no technology in this world as far as I can acknowledge, unless in the 30s and 40s China didn't have much technology at all. And the writing style and the dialogue of the characters is like reading a US written young adult fantasy. So there's no sense of time period, there's no sense of the characters being placed in this particular world. The characters are transferable to any world, they speak in a very modern way, and there's no sort of like archaic structure to their speech. They just speak like normal, I guess, American citizens, which is kind of disappointing because, as you guys know, I really love my East Asian fantasy, and the main reason for that is the atmosphere. I love the atmosphere of those books. I love the landscapes and the settings, and this book just does not really elaborate on any of that. However, if you do not read adult fantasy and you can handle the subject matter of this, because the tone is very dark, and that's another reason I feel like the story should be a little bit more dense, just because that's traditionally like really dark books have a more complicated writing style. But if you can handle the subject matters of this and you aren't experienced in adult fantasy, it is very accessible and easy to read. It's a very easy to read adult fantasy. So if you have been wanting to read this but adult fantasy scares you away because of how dense it is, it reads like a young adult fantasy, so the writing style is completely accessible. The trigger warnings I've encountered so far in this: self-harm. There's something nasty that happens, like she mutilates herself. There's a lot of gore in the war portions of this and people attacking each other. And there's also a tiny little bit of animal abuse in the war strategy. So that's what I've encountered so far. But I do believe it gets a lot worse, especially in the Rape of Nanking chapter. So that's pretty much it for this reading vlog. Once again, it seems to have been a series of longer updates as opposed to what I normally do. But like I said, just working on so many book diaries, it's hard to keep so many vlogs, because if I sit down and record, I'm just repeating the same thing over and over and over again. But like, this vlog was substantial enough with the updates that I had earlier in the week that I was like, you know what, it's fine. I'm giving in-depth thoughts on the books that I'm currently reading. So it's all good. But please don't forget to let me know if you have read any of the books that I have this week and what you thought of them. And please also don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to. That's weird because I just did like a real video outro on my vlog. But anyway, I'm off now, guys. Bye.
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.